Hey everyone, it's Rachel. So I've decided to make a YouTube channel and to start putting out some videos with some content that I feel is very important for all of us to know and for all of us to hear, because some things need to be said and some things need to be heard. But it's mainly though because we're in a fight right now. We're in a fight for our country, for our way of life, for our children's futures, for, everything that we have. And so we need to fight back with everything we have. If you're as pale as me, then with your white privilege, our white privilege, but with our ability to network, our ability to who we give our attention to as far as news outlets and stories and things like that, and who we give our money to. And it's just so easy to get used to the chaos. So we learned that from last time, that the chaos was so, so often. It was every single day. It was something new and something awful. And so the chaos was like normal after a while, because after a while, you just got to do your life, right? You can't just stop and be like, oh my God, Donald Trump's this huge asshole. But this time it's different. And so I feel like we really need to resist that feeling of this is our normal, and that we really need to focus on the fact that, this is different. This is serious. This is real. This is happening. And the time to fight is now. If the lessons of history have taught us anything, it's that this early in their administration or, time of power, I guess. But it's now, immediately, in the beginning. So I have felt so hopeless these last, few weeks that he's even been in office. And the thing that I keep coming back to, the question I keep asking myself is, what do we do? What could I possibly do? I have no power. I'm just a stay-at-home mom. I just take care of people and or my family, and that's kind of it. So I don't have any, but there are things that we can do. And so it just feels like we're being attacked from every angle, and that is so overwhelming. But I honestly feel like we need to start, I need to start with education. And so that is why I am starting an anti-fascist book club in my town. I live in a tiny little town, and I am personally reaching out to people in my town that I don't know to say, hey, you want to do this anti-fascist book club? So what I did was I posted on my Neighborhood Watch Facebook group, and, and I was able to connect with people from that, or in that way. And so I did not come up with that idea. That was from the Veterans Fighting Fascism and Task Force Butler Institute. And so if you go to Task Force Butler Institute, under resources, you should read, they have an article, What is Fascism? So that was really good. And so I have just a few things here, that I want to, go over real quick. So to please, join the General Strike. It's General Strike US. We need as many people as possible to fill out strike cards to attempt some collective bargaining, and to please get passports for you and your family, and to be aware that they expect you to hand over your original documents and then promise to return them to you. So as my sister-in-law Jody would say, yeah, no. So order duplicates of your originals first. And that is expensive. And I'm doing that for me and my family. So now on to what my plan is for this channel. I'm going to be reading from the books in the book club. I've heard of every excuse in the book. Well, book, fun. Anyways, I've heard of all the excuses of, oh, I can't read. I don't like to read. I don't have time. I don't, books aren't my thing, blah, 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 blah. So I am going to read them for you because that is something I do know how to do, which is read people books. So please keep in mind, please, I am not a professional. I do not know how to edit. I do not like taking videos of myself. I don't like the sound of my voice. And also, please like, subscribe, share, interact, whatever the people say in the videos, that they will help with, spreading the word. So anyways, I had to Google how to start a YouTube channel. And so now I'm going to read the prologue from the first book in the book reading list for the book club. It's called On Tyranny, by Timothy Snyder. And so someone actually had sent me a copy of this book, but I have it on my Kindle. So anyways, the prologue. History and tyranny. History does not repeat, but it does instruct. As the founding fathers debated our Constitution, they took instruction from the history they knew. Concerned that the democratic republic they envisioned would collapse, they contemplated the descent of ancient democracies and republics into oligarchy and empire. As they knew, Aristotle warned that inequality brought instability, while Plato believed that demagogues exploited free speech to install themselves as tyrants. In founding a democratic republic upon law and establishing a system of checks and balances, the founding fathers sought to avoid the evil that they, like the ancient philosophers, called tyranny. They had in mind the usurpation of power by a single individual or group, sound familiar? Or the circumvention of law by rulers for their own benefit. Much of the succeeding political debate in the United States has concerned the problem of tyranny within American society over slaves and women, for example. It is thus a primary American tradition to consider history when our political order seems imperiled. If we worry today that the American experiment is threatened by tyranny, we can follow the example of the founding fathers and contemplate the history of other democracies and republics. The good news is that we can draw upon more recent and relevant examples than ancient Greece and Rome. The bad news is that the history of modern democracy is also one of decline and fall. Since the American colonies declared their independence from a British monarchy that the founders deemed tyrannical, European history has seen three major democratic moments. After the First World War in 1918, after the Second World War in 1945, and after the end of communism in 1989. Many of the democracies founded at these junctures failed in circumstances that in some important respects resemble our own. History can familiarize and it can warn. In the late 19th century, just as in the late 20th century, the expansion of global trade generated expectations of progress. In the early 20th century, as in the early 21st, these hopes were challenged by new visions of mass politics in which a leader or a party claimed to directly represent the will of the people. European democracies collapsed into right-wing authoritarianism and fascism in the 1920s and 30s. The Communist Soviet Union, established in 1922, extended its model into Europe in the 1940s. The European history of the 20th century shows us that societies can break, democracies can fall, ethics can collapse and ordinary men can find themselves standing over death pits with guns in their hands, it would serve us well today to understand why. Both fascism and communism were responses to globalization, to the real and perceived inequalities it created, and the apparent helplessness of the democracies in addressing them. Fascists rejected reason in the name of will. Familiar. Denying objective truth in favor of a glorious myth articulated by leaders who claimed to give voice to the people. They put a face on globalization, arguing that its complex challenges were the result of a conspiracy against the nation. Fascists ruled for a decade or two, leaving behind an intact intellectual legacy that grows more relevant by the day. Communists ruled for longer, for nearly 7 decades in the Soviet Union and more than 4 decades in much of Eastern Europe. They proposed rule by a disciplined party elite with a monopoly on reason that would guide society towards a certain future according to supposedly fixed laws of history. We might be tempted to think that our democratic heritage automatically protects us from such threats. This is a misguided reflex. In fact, the precedent set by the founders demands that we examine history to understand the deep resources of tyranny. Not deep resources, deep sources of tyranny, and to consider the proper responses to it. Americans today are no wiser than the Europeans who saw democracy yield to fascism, Nazism, or communism in the 20th century. Our one advantage is that we might learn from their experience. Now is a good time to do so. This book presents 20 lessons from the 20th century adapted to the circumstances of today. So a lot to think about. I'm going to be posting these videos as fast as I can, really, because I feel like this information is really important. So those 20 lessons are really succinct and things that we can learn from. So okay, I'm going to post again as soon as I can. Today, right now I'm just waiting for a kid to get out of school and I see him. So, okay. What did they say? Subscribe. I don't get it.